I'm Chris Mitchell, coming to you from our U.S. studios in Virginia Beach. Explosive accusations of an elaborate Israeli spying operation on U.S.-Iranian nuclear negotiations. The Wall Street Journal reports Israel obtained confidential information, then shared it with U.S. lawmakers trying to thwart a nuclear deal. Israel denies the charges. The revelations come as tensions between Israel and the U.S. are escalating. George Thomas has the details.
The Wall Street Journal, citing unnamed sources, says Israel was spying on negotiations between the United States and Iran. In trying to build a case against any potential deal with Iran, the newspaper says Israel obtained confidential information from U.S. briefings, informants, and diplomatic contacts in Europe, then shared that intelligence with U.S. lawmakers. One senior U.S. official told the paper that it's one thing for the U.S. and Israel to spy on each other, it's another for Israel to steal U.S. secrets and play them back to legislators to undermine U.S. diplomacy. The U.S. says it learned about the Israeli spying operations from America's own spies, who intercepted some Israeli messages. Israel denies that it was spying. It says it got the information on the Iran talks in other ways, like watching Iran's leaders and speaking with European officials about the Iran talks. This latest spat between the two countries comes as the White House continues to criticize Netanyahu for comments he made about a Palestinian state toward the end of Israel's election campaign. On Monday, Obama's top advisor questioned the Israeli Prime Minister's sincerity while addressing a left-wing Jewish group.
Such contradictory comments call into question his commitment to a two-state solution.
Netanyahu later said he wants a two-state solution, but under the right conditions. But the White House has kept up its criticism. McDonough also warned that Israel's so-called occupation of Palestinian land must end, and that drew thunderous applause from the crowd.
An occupation that has lasted for almost 50 years must end. And the Palestinian people must have the right to live in and govern themselves in their own sovereign state.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham slammed McDonough's speech, saying the language used by the Chief of Staff of the President of the United States is exactly what Hamas uses. Arizona Senator John McCain also weighed in, calling President Obama to put aside his personal issues with the Israeli Prime Minister.
The President should get over it. Get over your temper tantrum, Mr. President. It's time that we work together with our Israeli friends and try to stem this tide of ISIS and Iranian movement throughout the region, which is threatening the very fabric of the region. The President has his priorities so screwed up that it's unbelievable.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Joining us now for more on the U.S.-Israel relationship, our CBN terrorism analyst Eric Steckelbeck from Washington, D.C., and from Jerusalem, our CBN senior editor John Waggy and Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl. Eric, what's the feeling in Washington? Is President Obama turning on Israel? Is that the sense you get?
Chris, I think there's no doubt about it. It's pretty clear how he feels, I believe, about Benjamin Netanyahu individually. Obviously, the president strongly dislikes the Israeli prime minister, but also Israel in general. Benjamin Netanyahu is the antithesis of Barack Obama. Yeah, it seems amazing that he seems to want more regime change in Israel than in Iran. Julie, what's the feeling in Israel about the Obama administration's attitude and their actions recently?
Well, you know, Chris, I mean, I think Israelis are troubled, but they'd like to just move on. They'd like to put this whole election thing behind them. The Obama administration, or whoever it was, the Israeli left, tried their hardest to put Netanyahu out of power. It didn't work. Let's move on.
But, John, it doesn't seem like at least the Obama administration wants to move on. What are the ramifications of this rift?
Well, it's going to be bad, and it's not just going to be bad for Israel. In fact, the Israelis may surmount this, and they may have to broaden their outlook on how they look at defense and foreign policy and everything to include countries like Egypt and like Saudi Arabia just in the short term to deal with Iran. This is the kind of climate where I hate to say it, but wars can start.
Yeah, Eric, you seem to be agreeing with what John was saying. What are your thoughts about this?
I couldn't say it any better. That's exactly what it is. President Obama has a deep-seated animus, a hostility towards Israel. He sees Israel as the kind of the Western occupying power, occupying the poor, oppressed third world Palestinians. You know, we're in a world turned upside down when the U.S. government, the Obama administration, is reportedly talking about sanctioning Israel. Yet they want to lift sanctions against an Iranian regime which has been the head of the terrorist snake for 36 years. And just recently, Chris, the supreme leader of Iran, during a rally in Tehran, called for death to America.
And that's why so much is at stake in the negotiations right now. Julie, you talked about the Israelis moving on, and Netanyahu right now has moved on in a sense. He's got enough seats to form a government. What do you think that government's going to look like?
It'll be a government that's based on security, though Netanyahu has said he's also really want to concentrate on the social reforms and the economy. It'll be a very right-wing government. It won't really be a government that wants to talk peace with the Palestinians.
Yeah, John, back to this issue with the U.S. and Israel. Congress seems to be taking Israel's side. Do you see a growing conflict between the branches of government, the legislature and the executive?
It isn't Congress that's moved. It's the White House and the State Department that have moved dramatically to a situation of open confrontation with Israel. So yes, I think that Congress is, they're alarmed by it. I think many on Capitol Hill are alarmed by it. Israel is our closest ally and the only democratic ally in the region, and that hasn't changed over a period of decades.
Right. Eric, final question to you. What do you see in the future for U.S.-Israel relations?
I believe that the Obama administration, Chris, is doing its best to leave the relationship in tatters. President Obama gets his way, and he gets this grand bargain with Iran over its nuclear weapons program. Suppose Israel says, hey, we can't live with this, and strikes Iran's nuclear facilities militarily. That is a very real possibility. And if that happens, you can only imagine the scorn that the Obama administration and the world will feel against Israel. It's very biblical. You know, Zechariah talks about Jerusalem becoming a burdensome stone for the whole world. And I think we may be moving into those times now.
Yeah, it seems that way. And I know another scripture many Christians cite is Genesis 12:2 and 3, that those that bless Israel will be blessed, those that curse Israel will be cursed. John and Julie, how do you think Christians should be praying for Israel right now?
Pray that the Israeli people will keep going on, that they'll be strong, that their hearts will be turned towards the Lord. I think, in many cases, I feel more afraid for the United States.
You know, the United States is going to be entering into a 2016 race, and I think what Christians need to be praying for not only the presidential leadership, but also really that the truth will come out. The whole Middle East is, as we've said over and over again, is a tinderbox, and so and obviously prayer for our fellow brothers and sisters in the region all around who are suffering so much.
Great points for prayer. Eric Steckelback from Washington, D.C., John Waggy and Julie Stahl from Jerusalem, thanks for joining us.